Forget everything you think you know about courage. Picture yourself crossing a crowded hallway, knowing nobody there wants you around. Feel the stares slicing like glass, muffled laughter burning more than punches. How many times could you stand? Being pushed before you finally break? And what if your greatest challenge isn't the enemy ahead, but the silence all around you? There are schools where bullying is law, and justice only comes when it suits those in power. But today, the one who was always a target just might become an arrow. What happens when someone turns pain into power in front of everyone? Take a deep breath, because this story starts exactly where everyone expected it to end. Have you ever seen a quiet girl become a legend in just 1 minute? Rumors travel fast, but no gossip compares to the noise of a fall. An entire school becomes an audience when scandal has the face no one wants to see. But the stage is set, and this time, it's not for another elite show. What nobody realizes is that, behind the scenes, humiliation doesn't create victims. It builds warriors. What happens when a janitor's daughter challenges her own destiny? Can a patched-up kimono make more noise than 1,000 medals? There are people rooting for her failure. But by the end, they'll be the first on their feet, clapping. Everyone pretends to be tough until fear hits. But what makes someone refuse to quit, even after falling 1,000 times? Amara Collins didn't ask permission, didn't apologize, didn't say sorry. She just walked in and changed everything. In this story, even the silence is loud. You don't have to shout to be heard when every gesture becomes an answer no one can ignore. The impossible has a name, an address, and its own soundtrack. The sound of her steps crossing the stage where every door was once locked. When pain becomes fuel, even the world stops to watch. And you'll want to see how it all ends. You know that moment when everything seems lost, but someone decides they won't run anymore? No one bets on those born invisible, but who says victory needs an audience? Those who've been humiliated turn every scar into strategy. If you've fallen, you know the way to the ground, but only those who rise find out where the sky is. What makes an elite school tremble in front of a single student? Don't expect fake smiles or predictable endings. Here, every second is a plot twist, every glance a verdict, every step a challenge to the rules. And the stage is set for whoever dares to be seen. There's no armor stronger than the truth of someone who's lost it all. If you've never feared bleeding, you learn to use your own name as a shield. When the school tries to erase someone, it finds out anonymity is just the start of a legend. Amara didn't want revenge. She wanted peace, but to win it, she had to fight with invisible weapons. No one expects the power of a simple gesture until it breaks the silence. What happens when the audience has to admit they were wrong? And if the greatest prize isn't a trophy, but the right to exist without bowing your head? This isn't a story about perfect champions. It's about survivors who decide to write their own ending, even when the whole world bets against them. Get ready to feel anger, pride, outrage, hope, and above all, the urge to never doubt the strength of someone born fighting. Because today, the impossible is about to choose a new name to carve into history. Don't blink. Don't breathe. Don't click away, because if this school learns anything, it's that silence never beats those who learn to rise. But before listening to this exciting story, if you are not yet subscribed to our channel, subscribe now and become part of our community. The worn-out shoes made a muffled sound against the polished floor of St. Margaret's Academy. Amara walked slowly, patched-up backpack hugging her back, eyes downcast and hands gripping the zipper. Her new uniform looked borrowed. The hallway reeked of expensive perfume, and each stiletto click echoed like a judgment. On the right, Lorraine moved her mop with quiet patience, eyes down, but her presence was a silent lighthouse. 3 girls stopped by the water fountain and chuckled. "Look, the little janitor brought her daughter to work? One whispered. Amara didn't flinch. But the pain entered the classroom before she did. Mr. Hargrove, in a flawless suit and a face that looked untouched by weather, stopped in front of her. He looked her up and down slowly. No good morning, no questions, just scribbled something in his pad and motioned slightly with his chin. Amara stepped into the classroom like crossing into enemy territory. The teacher, with little enthusiasm, pointed to a desk at the very back, next to the emergency exit. There, please. Faint laughter floated in through the open windows. Amara sat down, folding into herself, as if even existing was an intrusion. When roll call began, her name was butchered. Amaria, is that it? She nodded once. A student stifled a laugh. During class, she focused harder than anyone, as if every letter she wrote could become a shield. But the first strike came fast. Jackson, a tall boy with neatly combed blonde hair, pretended to trip and rammed her arm. Her notebook fell. No apology. The teacher didn't react. And Lorraine, mopping the hallway just outside, heard it all and said nothing. At recess, Amara waited until the last student left before heading to the cafeteria. She passed colorful posters of fencing clubs, international trips, and summer camps. The tables were full, yet none had room for a girl like her. She sat on a bench in the courtyard and opened her lunchbox with care. A simple sandwich, chopped apple, and a napkin folded with love. That was all, and that was enough. But today, something extra had been slipped inside. A crumpled note, stained with red ink, sat between her sandwich and the fruit. Amara hesitated. When she unfolded it, her fingers trembled slightly. Go back to the dump with your mom. That was it. No name, no signature. But the handwriting belonged to a girl, one of them. Amara folded it neatly. She didn't cry. Not this time. Back in class, it seemed everyone knew. Hidden giggles, side eyes, whispers like a cold draft. The teacher kept teaching like nothing happened. Amara tried to focus on the board, but the letters blurred. Somewhere inside, one question kept echoing. Why? What did I do to deserve this? What is it about me that bothers them so much? After school, Lorraine waited outside, her work coat still dusty. She didn't ask anything. Amara didn't speak. Their silence was old. But as they walked to the bus, stopped side by side, Lorraine gently touched her daughter's hand. A small gesture, but firm, as if saying, I saw, I know. Amara looked forward and pressed her lips tight. She didn't know it yet, but resistance had already begun. That night, at home, no one mentioned the note. Lorraine served dinner, laid out tomorrow's uniform, and left the hallway light on. Just like always, Amara lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was small, but it held everything that mattered: silence, old photos, and faith. In the bottom drawer, there was a box she'd never opened, but it wasn't time yet. Tomorrow she'd return to that place that didn't want her there. But she would return. Asterisk, asterisk. The sound of a mop sliding across the floor blended with the students' loud laughter in the hallway. Lorraine kept her pace steady, knees aching, posture upright. Her breathing was silent, but her eyes said everything. Across the room, boys crumpled papers and threw them on the floor laughing, treating her like furniture, invisible and disposable. A chemistry teacher walked by and wrinkled his nose. What's that smell, huh? He said, looking directly at her. Lorraine didn't flinch, just nodded and scrubbed harder. Some stains come off with soap. Others only God can cleanse. Amara watched everything from a distance. Sitting in the back of the study hall, her eyes quiet and alert. Between exercises, her gaze would drift to her mother and return. She said nothing. She'd learned that silence is sometimes the only way to survive. A student dropped a banana peel on purpose. Lorraine picked it up without a word. Amara lowered her eyes but bit her lip so hard it nearly bled. A silent rage. that had no room to escape. A wound no one could see. In the cafeteria, the story repeated itself. Tables full of loud teens, designer bags, and overpriced phones. Amara entered slowly, scanning for a spot. None. She walked to the end of an empty table, opened her lunchbox without rush. But that was enough to trigger the giggles. "Look, poverty lunchbox," one of the girls said. It was Trish. She was eating sushi and wore a pink blazer with her name embroidered. Amara's eyes didn't move, but something inside her hardened. Lorraine was scrubbing the staircase when she heard a voice from the teacher's lounge. "Janitors shouldn't have kids in this school," a man grumbled. "It's awkward," no one replied, but no one disagreed either. Lorraine didn't stop scrubbing, though her eyes welled up. She kept moving. Between marble and humiliation, she prayed in silence. No words, no requests, just presence. Some mothers fight on their knees and win in silence. At dismissal, Amara walked past Chloe and Madison. They laughed, staring at her shoes. Are those sneakers or museum artifacts? Amara didn't respond, didn't flinch. She walked past them like dust. Lorraine watched from afar. Pride and pain woven into one glance. Her daughter stayed silent, but didn't bow. That too was resistance. In the bathroom before heading home, Amara washed her hands and finally broke down. The tears came soundlessly. Just trembling shoulders, locked jaw, eyes lost in the mirror. Lorraine entered quietly. She saw her daughter's back, walked over, no questions, no words. Just wrapped her arms around her and held tight, as if to say, "I'm here." And she was. "They hate me without even knowing my name," Amara whispered. Lorraine rested her chin on her shoulder. "They see what you carry, but they don't understand. And what they don't understand, they try to break." Amara took a deep breath, still teary-eyed, but steadier. That hug put her broken pieces back in place. A small fortress rebuilt with tenderness. As they left the bathroom, Lorraine held Amara's hand for a second longer than usual and said, "You're made of things they can't see," that was all. But at that moment, between white tiles and pain, those words took root. Amara didn't answer, just gripped her mother's hand tighter, and even invisible, she kept walking. On Tuesday morning, Amara arrived earlier than usual. The hallway was still half empty, with distant voices and footsteps echoing from the upper floors. She walked slowly, gripping her backpack straps tightly. She hoped that, with fewer people around, she might go unnoticed. But Jackson was already there, leaning against the classroom door as if waiting for her. As soon as he saw her, he stretched out his arms theatrically, as if saying, "Welcome to your nightmare." She tried to walk past him in silence, but he brushed her shoulder on purpose. "Careful, scholarship girl, don't dirty my uniform." Her eyes stayed on the floor. He laughed out loud. And the day was just beginning. The first class ran tense, like a wire about to snap. Amara kept her eyes on her notebook but heard everything. Muffled laughter, crumpled papers, whispers with her name in the middle. Someone stuck gum on the floor, exactly where she always placed her backpack. When she noticed, the bottom was already glued. She tried to pull it gently, but the teacher just cast a vague glance and said, "Clean it up." Later, Chloe laughed loudly from the back of the room. Amara sat down, pretending nothing had happened. But inside, something burned like an open wound. It wasn't the first humiliation, and surely wouldn't be the last, but it hurt the same. Maybe more. In the next class, Jackson pulled her chair with his foot just as she was sitting. She fell sideways but got up quickly, pretending it was a stumble. "Clumsy," Trish said, masking the cruelty with a doll-like smile. Amara didn't react. Lorraine, who was cleaning the hallway, saw it from afar. She paused the mop for a second, but said nothing. She knew that, in that environment, any word from her would only put a bigger target on her daughter. The class went on with tension thick in the air. The teacher completely ignored what had happened, and everyone kept laughing as if pushing someone down and calling it a joke was just routine. Amara gripped her pencil so hard the tip nearly snapped. At recess, she walked to the courtyard, sat alone in a shaded corner, and took out the same simple sandwich from her lunchbox. When she opened the package, she found a napkin decorated with little flowers. Lorraine always left one in there, a subtle reminder of love. But the affection was drowned out by laughter coming from afar. 3 students pointed and whispered. Trish took a photo of Amara with her phone. She looked great on the dump wall, she said, laughing out loud. Amara lifted her eyes, but said nothing. She packed her lunch, folded the napkin carefully, and left the courtyard. There was no safe place there. Not even silence offered shelter. Everything hurt. Even the wind. At the end of the day, Lorraine found a note taped to the janitor's closet. It was a torn piece of notebook paper, red letters, "Trash belongs in the trash can." She removed it gently and put it in her pocket. She had seen many things in her years there, but this one cut deep because it was aimed at her daughter. She climbed the stairs slowly, past 2 teachers talking, and pretended not to hear one of them say, "That girl's drawing too much attention." The wrong kind. Lorraine didn't stop, but her hand tightened around the note, and her eyes gleamed with restrained anger. Inside her, something was shifting, something very old. In the last class of the day, art, tension hung like a heavy cloud. Students painted in groups, but Amara worked alone. Her brush moved, slowly, creating shapes only she understood. Jackson walked behind her with calculated steps, pretended to trip, shoved her chair hard. She fell forward, and the brush, covered in dark paint, slid across her face. The classroom burst into laughter. The teacher clapped her hands to get silence, but seemed more annoyed by the noise than the incident. "Let's stay focused, please," she said, as if it were just a minor mishap. Amara didn't cry, stayed on the floor for 2 seconds, then got up. Her face still smeared. She returned to her seat without looking at anyone. Jackson smiled, pleased. Trish gave a silent, mocking applause. Amara sat down calmly, picked up the brush from the floor, and kept painting. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. It was something different, denser, as if suddenly that paint meant something else. A kind of mark, a kind of reply. Lorraine, standing at the doorway with a mop bucket, saw everything. And seeing her daughter stand up on her own, she realized the girl wasn't in the same place anymore. She was still getting hurt, yes, but she was no longer the same. Something inside her had awakened. At dismissal, Lorraine walked over quietly, pulled a wipe from her purse. Gently, she wiped her daughter's face. No one said a word. The late afternoon sun poured through the school's tall windows. Lorraine looked into her eyes and whispered, "You're starting to get strong." Amara nodded softly, then looked up at the tall building behind her. She knew she didn't belong there, but she also knew she wouldn't leave easily. And in that moment, holding the paint-stained wipe, she understood a silent truth. Being a target hurts, but it also prepares you. And she was getting ready. Asterisk, asterisk. That night, the house felt smaller than usual. Amara came in quietly, climbed the stairs slowly, and went straight to her room. Lorraine closed the front door, hung her bag on the hook, and let out a long breath. She could feel something in the air, like a string pulled too tight. In her room, Amara lay across the bed and didn't move. The tears came, but they weren't loud. They simply rolled down, as if asking for no permission. The silence was dense, cutting. Downstairs, Lorraine prepared dinner without a word. 2 lives in the same house, trying not to sink. But Lorraine knew that sometimes words weren't enough. A sharp sound broke the silence. Shattering glass. Lorraine rushed upstairs. She found Amara standing in front of the knit stand. The glass of water lay in pieces on the floor. The girl was shaking. "Sorry, Mom." Lorraine didn't answer right away. She looked into her daughter's eyes and saw something new. Pain, yes, but also something sharper. Anger, humiliation, exhaustion. The girl was at her limit. Lorraine stepped closer and gently touched her daughter's shoulder. "Come with me." They went downstairs together. Amara asked nothing. There are silences that speak through blood. At the back of the bookshelf cabinet, Lorraine took out an old wooden box. She placed it on the table like someone offering a secret. The lid creaked as it opened. Inside, a gold medal, a faded blue ribbon, and an aged newspaper clipping. The photo showed a strong black man holding a trophy, eyes full of tears. "This was your grandfather, Elijah." Amara sat down. Slowly, held the medal in both hands, felt the weight. "He was a fighter?" Lorraine nodded. "Judo, Olympic champion in the 70s. But he didn't fight out of anger. He fought to stay whole." Silence hung for a few seconds. The medal gleamed under the dim light of the lamp. Amara looked at it like it held an answer. Lorraine sat beside her. "He used to say real strength is knowing when not to use your fists." The girl took a deep breath. "I want to learn, Mom." Lorraine stayed silent. Her eyes drifted to the window for a moment. Then she looked back at her daughter. "Learn to hit?" Amara shook her head. "No, learn to stand." It was the first time her voice didn't tremble in days. Lorraine simply nodded. The decision was made. The next morning, the school looked the same on the outside. Same luxury cars, same loud students. But something inside Amara was different. As she entered the building, her body still tensed, but not her eyes. Jackson bumped into her in the hallway, as usual. But this time, she didn't stumble, didn't mutter an apology. She just planted her feet and kept walking. Chloe mocked. Her hair, she didn't react. But she tightened her fist discreetly. The gesture went unnoticed by everyone. Except Lorraine, watching from afar with a cloth in her hands. And a new glint in her eyes. During gym class, Trish tried a sweep as Amara walked across the court. It was subtle, as always. But almost instinctively, Amara stepped back and dodged. No stumble. No drama. As if her body already knew before she did. The girl kept walking without looking back. Trish stood frozen for a moment, surprised. Lorraine, sweeping near the bleachers, saw it all. She didn't smile. But she reached into her pocket and pressed the blue ribbon she always carried. It was only the beginning. But for mothers who see the invisible, it was already victory. On the way home, there were no words. But there was understanding. Amara put her uniform in the machine and washed the dishes without being asked. Then she headed alone to the backyard. Lorraine waited a few minutes. Then followed. Night was falling and the sky was turning deep blue. In the middle of the yard, hanging from a reinforced clothesline, was an old punching bag, patched in 3 spots. Beside it, a makeshift mat made of tires and tarp. Amara looked at her mother. Lorraine simply said, 3 minutes, breathe, move, silence. The training began there. And with it, a new story. As Amara practiced her first strikes, the sound of her body hitting the bag echoed soft but firm. Each punch was an answer that needed no words. Lorraine timed her with an old wristwatch. Watched closely, corrected with a nod. Amara missed. Tried again. Fell, got back up. The stars began appearing in the sky. The night was quiet, but full of something new. A strength born from exhaustion, from trauma, from the faith of someone who's never been seen. And there, among worn tarps and living memories, The seed was planted, the seed of what one day no one would be able to ignore. On Friday morning, the school felt louder than usual. Hidden smirks, phones in hand, whispers crossing the hallways. Amara walked in unaware that something new awaited her. On the bulletin board, nothing seemed unusual. But behind the scenes, a video was spreading. Madison had secretly filmed a moment from the previous break, Amara picking up papers off the library floor. She didn't know she was being recorded. The video, edited with mocking emojis and a comedic soundtrack, was shared in private student groups. The title, "The Janitor's Daughter Doing Overtime." Within minutes, it became the school's favorite joke. And she, once again, was the target. On the second floor, Jackson showed the video to two friends, laughing out loud. "She thinks she's special now? Time to remind her who she is." Trish clapped silently, barely holding back laughter. Chloe said this was only the beginning. Teachers saw it too, but no one said a word. "Let's not stir up drama," was heard in one of the rooms. Amara, unaware of what was happening, went about her day as usual, silent. But that strange feeling came right after math class, when a group laughed loudly as she walked by. One of them held a phone pointed straight at her. She stopped for a second, asked nothing, but felt everything. In the bathroom, she found a sentence, written in red marker on the stall door. "Clean it well, janitor's daughter." Amara placed her hand on the wood. For a second, she thought about wiping it off, then gave up. She had no energy left. She sat on the closed toilet seat and stayed there, motionless, for several minutes. The noise from the world outside felt like it came from another planet. The school, shiny on the outside, smelled rotten inside. In that muffled loneliness, she clenched her hands in her lap and whispered to herself, "Just one more day, just one." But her voice came out weak. For the first time, she thought about never coming back. At dismissal, Lorraine waited in the usual spot. But when she saw her daughter's face, she knew something was different. Her eyes were low, her shoulders heavier. What happened? Amara shook her head. Nothing. The answer was short, but the silence that followed was long. At home, Lorraine served dinner and watched. Amara barely touched her food. Went to her room early. Lorraine stayed alone in the kitchen, staring at the window as if waiting for a sign from heaven. She knew something was happening, but she couldn't protect her daughter from what she couldn't see, and that ate her up inside. Later, when Amara was already asleep, Lorraine went to wash the uniform. As she opened the backpack, she found a folded paper between the notebooks. It was a printed screenshot, the video. Below the image, a handwritten caption, "You'll never be like U.S." Lorraine sat at the table, gripping the paper firmly. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. The silence in the house was as heavy as the injustice they carried. She stood up, opened a drawer, and pulled out an old stopwatch, placed it on the table beside the faded blue ribbon, took a deep breath, and whispered, "It's time." The next morning, the sky was overcast. Amara woke up without an appetite. Lorraine laid the uniform on the bed and said only, "Tonight after dinner, we begin." Amara didn't understand right away, but didn't ask. She knew her mother didn't speak impulsively. At school, the stares were heavier than ever. The video had spread like wildfire. Even people who had never spoken to her now pointed fingers. The hallway had become a courtroom. But Amara walked with what dignity she had left. She wasn't trying to hide anymore. Now, she was surviving. Arriving home, she found the table set, a simple dinner, and a folded towel over the makeshift mat in the backyard. Lorraine wore one of Alicia's old t-shirts and held the stopwatch in both hands. Breathe. Move. Silence. Amara put on her sneakers. The first training of this new phase began there. Each punch was an answer to what she couldn't say. Each kick, a refusal to be broken. Lorraine watched in silence. Her eyes burned, but she smiled on the inside. Her daughter was standing. And that was already a miracle. On the last round, Amara fell sideways on the ground. Breathless, arms wide, eyes staring at the sky. Lorraine approached slowly, kneeled beside her and said, with a calm voice, "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. But if you want to show who you are, we'll do it your way." Amara didn't reply, just closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The night was dark, but stars were starting to appear. And in that humble backyard, beneath a sky bigger than any humiliation, the real preparation began. Not to fight them, but to never again doubt herself. ***, Amara's routine changed without anyone noticing. During the day, she was still the quiet, invisible girl in St. Margaret's hallways. But at night, the backyard took on a new rhythm. Lorraine timed everything with the old stopwatch while Amara repeated the movements she was taught. Every strike was followed by firm but gentle corrections. Shoulders lower, feet grounded, breath steady. Again, Lorraine would say with calm authority. Amara made mistakes, tried again, fell, got up, and started over. There were no cheers, no applause. Just two women, in the shadows of their yard, building something no one could see, but soon, no one would be able to ignore. The first days were the hardest. Her body ached. Her muscles protested. The makeshift mat didn't forgive the falls. But there was something in the way Lorraine looked at her daughter after each session. A silent firmness, like someone seeing beyond the pain. At school, nothing had changed. The teasing continued, the fake laughter, the cutting stares. But something inside Amara had begun to resist. Like a root breaking through concrete, slowly. Jackson tried to push her in the lunch line. She simply shifted her body, light and firm, didn't look at him, didn't react. But inside, something smiled. In biology class, Chloe dropped her pen near Amara's desk on purpose. "Pick it up, since you like serving people," she said. The class laughed. Amara looked at the pen, then at Chloe. She said nothing, just kept writing. Chloe went quiet. Amara's silence unsettled them more than any harsh reply could. It was as if her steady gaze now said, "You don't break me anymore." That day, Lorraine was cleaning the upstairs hallway. A breeze blew in through the open window. She smiled. God speaks in silences only mothers understand. That night's training was different. Amara managed to complete the full strike sequence for the first time. Her hands were steady, her feet grounded, breath controlled. Lorraine, stopwatch in hand, said nothing, but her eyes shone. Amara dropped to her knees at the end, sweaty, exhausted, but whole. "Is this strength?" she asked, breathless. Lorraine knelt beside her. "Strength is when pain doesn't stop you." Amara nodded with a faint smile. For the first time, her body felt like shelter, not a burden. She didn't need to shrink to fit anymore. She was learning to take up space, even when the world told her not to. The next day, while cleaning the girls' locker room, Lorraine overheard a conversation between teachers. "The coordinator wants to cut that girl from the talent show. It'll be embarrassing if she messes up. Her enrollment's already enough." Lorraine stopped scrubbing. Her heart raced. She knew how much that event meant to Amara. It wasn't just a performance, it was a voice. A chance to show who she was without asking permission. She went home early that day, found Amara studying in the kitchen, said nothing, just placed the folded training uniform on the table. The message was clear. That night's training was more intense. Amara missed the first movements. Lorraine stopped the timer. "What's breaking your focus?" The girl hesitated. They want to take me out of the event. Lorraine stepped closer. Then we'll train like no one can stop you. Amara swallowed hard. This wasn't just about school. It was about voice. About place. About legacy. Her strikes came sharper. Less anger, more center. The backyard filled with steady sounds. Footsteps. Breath. Impact. Every punch said, I exist. And Lorraine, heart pounding, whispered inside herself, my daughter is coming back to herself. The next morning, Chloe passed Amara and hissed, you rehearsing for failure? Amara simply looked at her, not with anger, but with something new in her eyes. Chloe pulled back confused. It was like the girl who used to bow her head now carried a certainty no one could name. During break, Jackson tried to make a joke, but no one laughed. Trish made a nasty comment, but it fell flat. Something was shifting, still subtle but noticeable. Amara didn't need to fight back. Her presence already filled more space than they were ready for. And in that school, that was revolutionary. That night, after training, Amara looked at Lorraine and asked, if they don't let me, we'll still do it? Lorraine smiled, gentle but resolute. We always do, even when they say we can't. Amara bowed her head and took a deep breath. Her arms were marked, her hands calloused, but in her chest, there was a new kind of fire. One that didn't burn, it illuminated. And as the night settled over their yard, Lorraine raised her eyes to the sky. They have no idea what's being born here. And truly they didn't, but soon, they would. Friday began with a strange kind of silence in the air. Amara felt the eyes on her the moment she stepped into school. Unlike other days, there were no direct jokes or loud laughs. Just muffled whispers, exchanged glances, and an atmosphere of anticipation, like something was about to unfold. Lorraine noticed too. While cleaning the main hall, she saw Jackson walking with his phone in hand, a crooked smile on his lips. Chloe and Trish whispered on the stairs, holding bright folders that clearly had nothing inside. Their movements had the rhythm of a rehearsed cruelty. But Amara walked on, unaware of the staging. Right after history class, Amara found a note inside her pencil case. A message written in purple pen, forced handwriting. Talent rehearsal today in the library. 12:30, don't tell anyone. For a moment, she hesitated. No one had ever included her in any group or circle. But there was something odd about the handwriting, too off to ignore. She folded the note into her pocket and didn't mention it. Deep down, doubt twisted in her stomach, but there was also a desire to belong. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe someone had noticed what she'd been training for. Right at 12:30, Amara climbed the stairs to the library. The place was nearly empty. The curtains were partly drawn, blocking the sunlight. The silence felt thicker than usual. She walked between the shelves toward the back, where a single table stood, empty except for a phone perched on a tripod. Made of books, she stopped. And then, they appeared. Jackson, Chloe, and Madison emerged slowly, like rehearsed shadows. The star has arrived, Chloe said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Amara stood still. The phone started recording. We want a video from you, just to make sure you won't embarrass the school at the talent show, Jackson said, stepping closer. Say you regret it, that you won't get on stage, that it was a mistake. Amara took one step back. Chloe filmed. Madison laughed. Either you record it, or we'll make your talent roll down the stairs. The threat was cold. Jackson nodded toward the library's side door, the one that led to the emergency stairwell. The message was clear. Amara took a breath. Her eyes didn't shake. There was something different in that gaze. Jackson stepped in closer. The tension thickened like smoke. He reached out, about to grab her arm. But before he could touch her, Amara moved. A short, precise turn, no aggression. Her body reacted like it had waited for this moment. Her right foot advanced firmly and with light control. She unbalanced the boy. Jackson fell to the side, completely off guard. Silence struck the room. Chloe lowered the phone. Madison stepped back. Fear filled the space where mockery once lived. Amara didn't follow, didn't yell. She simply stood her ground, as if saying, "Enough, you're crazy," Chloe yelled, stepping back again. Jackson stood, confused, unsure how he had fallen. Amara didn't respond. She looked directly at the phone on the floor, still recording. She walked over, picked it up calmly. And then, something shifted. From the library's main entrance came a voice. A surprised shout, loud and clear. Did someone film that? It was the voice of a student who had just walked in, drawn by the noise. She held up her own phone, pointed directly at the group. Chloe turned, startled. Jackson tried to cover his face, but it was too late. The student ran out of the library, still recording. The others stood frozen, caught between shock and shame. Amara exhaled slowly. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from contained strength. She knew what this meant. The whole school would see it. But for the first time, she didn't fear what they'd think. Lorraine, in another wing of the school, was mopping the second-floor hallway when she heard fast footsteps and shouts echoing through the corridor. She looked through the door's window. Her heart sped up. Something had happened. And it wasn't small. In the library, Amara set the phone back down, screen off, looked around. Jackson was backing away without a word. Chloe whispered angrily at Madison, but no one touched her. No one dared. She fixed her hair with one hand, picked up her backpack from beside the shelf, and walked out. Didn't speak, didn't rush, and didn't look back. In the hallway, the noise began to swell again. But now, it was a different kind of sound. Murmurs of shock, students coming out of classrooms. Someone said, "She stood up to him." Amara kept walking, but inside she already knew this wasn't over. The video spread like wildfire. Before the afternoon ended, every hallway echoed with Amara's name. Some said it with surprise, others with anger. Jackson tried to deny it, but the footage was clear. Chloe claimed it was a misunderstanding, but no one seemed convinced. In group chats, the video of Amara defending herself circulated with split captions. "She was brave and she's violent." The school, silent just days before, had become a courtroom. And the girl they'd all ignored was now on everyone's lips. Lorraine watched the video standing in the janitor's closet. When it ended, she sat down and closed her eyes. The next morning, Lorraine found a note left in her locker. It was short and direct. "Report to the coordination office at 10 a.m. She read it calmly, folded it, and placed it in her coat pocket. She already knew what was coming. And it wasn't fair. She walked out to the yard, where Amara was wiping down the makeshift mat like she did every morning. She said nothing, just looked at her daughter, who understood immediately. "They're kicking me out." Lorraine took a moment. "They're trying, but they won't succeed if we show them who you really are." Her eyes held pain, but also a strength that would not bow. The meeting began with uncomfortable silence. Coordinator Hargrove adjusted his glasses. The principal crossed her arms. Two teachers sat in the back. Lorraine remained standing. "The video that circulated yesterday is serious," Hargrove began. "The school's integrity is at stake." Lorraine nodded but said nothing. "Considering the student's background, her origin, and recent behavior, we propose immediate suspension, followed by dismissal." The word was cold. Lorraine didn't flinch. She opened her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. She handed it to the principal with both hands. Before you decide, read this. Inside were an old photo, a faded certificate, and a yellowed newspaper clipping. The image showed Elijah Collins, Olympic medalist, being honored by the U.S. Army. On the back, a handwritten note. To my greatest legacy, my granddaughter. Lorraine spoke with calm strength. My daughter isn't violent. She was trained not to hurt, but to endure. The looks in the room shifted. The principal passed the photo around. Hargrove cleared his throat. Still, it was a physical act inside the school. Lorraine didn't back down. She only defended herself. And now, I want her to show who she is, on that stage. In front of everyone. A long silence followed. One of the teachers, quiet until then, broke it. If she can do that responsibly, it could be a lesson for all of us. The principal looked up. If Amara performs and doesn't cause any incident, we'll reconsider. Lorraine nodded. Took the envelope back with care. She's not doing this to prove anything to you. She's doing it so she doesn't forget who she is. She left the room without a goodbye. Walked out with the steadiness of someone who's cleaned too many floors to ever be stepped on again. The decision was made. Now it was up to Amara. Later that day, Lorraine found her daughter sitting on the steps near the service entrance. The sun turned her braids golden. Amara sat silently, holding her phone with the video in her hands. Will they let me? Lorraine sat beside her. On one condition, that you show who you are without hurting anyone. Amara took a deep breath. I can do that, Mom. Lorraine looked to the sky, then at her daughter. You were born knowing how. That sentence fell like a blessing. A confirmation. Amara gave a soft smile. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't carry fear. That night, the backyard became a temple. Lorraine laid out the mat, lit a candle in the corner, and placed Elijah's medal on the tarp. Amara stepped in barefoot. Her steps were light but grounded. The wind blew gently, as if it too was watching. Lorraine simply said, "This isn't training anymore, it's memory." Amara began the kata. Her movements were precise, graceful, deliberate. Every gesture carried the weight of what needed to be said. It wasn't violence, it was response. It wasn't revenge, it was truth. Past, present, and the legacy of an invisible man took shape through the arms of a girl no one wanted to see. When she finished, Amara knelt in front of the medal. She said nothing. Lorraine walked over and draped a light sheet across her daughter's shoulders. Now you're ready. But the next morning, tension still hung in the air. Rumors spread quickly. Some said she'd be booed. Others claimed she wouldn't have the courage to go on stage. But Amara didn't listen. She cleaned her sneakers, hand-washed her uniform, prepared her hair with care. Outside, the world kept shouting, but inside her, there was silence. And in that silence, a truth was blooming. Her answer would come through movement. The St. Margaret's auditorium had never been so full. Parents, teachers, students, and staff filled every seat in tense anticipation. The event had always been a parade of polished acts, piano recitals, French poems, ballet solos. All flawless, all predictable, all elite. Backstage, Amara stood calmly, body steady but alert. She wore a white kimono, hand-sewn by Lorraine, who sat in the front row. The wide sleeves swayed gently with each deep breath. This wasn't just a performance. It was a declaration. A request to be seen without begging. And at its center, an invisible girl about to become visible. The announcer's voice trembled slightly. Now Amara Collins, presenting a kata demonstration. A ripple passed through the crowd. Kata, someone whispered. Is that dance? The stage lights flared. Amara stepped forward slowly. No music, no backdrop. Just her, the bare stage, and silence. She took center stage, feet aligned, eyes closed. Drew in a steady breath, then began. The first movement was slow and circular, the second, firm and controlled. Each gesture looked chiseled by time, and the silence became respect. Faces began to change, first curiosity, then focus. Amara's arms sliced the air with grace and precision. Discipline without stiffness, power without violence. Her feet touched the stage like they belonged there. Each step forward said, "I exist." Each retreat said, "I know myself." The audience leaned in. Jackson watched without sarcasm. Chloe's shoulders stiffened. Lorraine watched with held-back tears, her heart beating like an ancestral drum. That girl was not the same. Amara spun with softness, like moving between time and memory. The light hit her kimono, making it shimmer gold. The final moves came like visible breaths, firm, subtle, undeniable. When she stopped, she brought her hands together and bowed. One full second of silence, then a single clap, then another, and another, until the whole auditorium stood. The applause fell like rain. Lorraine covered her face with her hands. She wept openly, for Amara's grandfather, for herself, and for all the women who had walked in silence but never in weakness. At the back of the room, students were recording. Teachers exchanged quiet glances. The principal dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Hargrove remained frozen, choking on his own judgment. But Amara wasn't looking for faces. She looked straight. Ahead, Lorraine stood with a hand over her chest. Amara returned the gaze with a half-smile. Left the stage with the same calm she'd entered. The kimono draped her like soft armor. She didn't need protection anymore. The performance wasn't an attack, it was a statement. And the audience got it. Descending the stairs, a path of students parted before her. No laughter, no whispers. Just eyes, real eyes seeing her. Trish looked down. Chloe avoided her gaze. Jackson stepped aside. Lorraine came to her daughter and embraced her right there, in front of everyone. A long, unhurried embrace, as if time paused just for them. Lorraine whispered, "You were perfect." Amara replied, eyes moist, "I was me." Around them, the world seemed different. And inside her, something was whole. For the first time, she didn't feel beneath anyone. Meanwhile, in the teachers' lounge, the comments buzzed. "The most authentic act of the night," one said. She transformed the whole room. The principal nodded, eyes still damp. "That girl has more courage than all of us." Hargrove said nothing, eyes fixed. On the floor, the name Amara Collins now carried different weight in the halls. No longer a joke, no longer a target. She had redefined what it meant to be seen. Lorraine, walking alone across the quiet courtyard after the event, passed by the trash. Can where so many cruel notes had once been tossed. She smiled. This was where the cleaning truly began. Later that night, Amara hung the kimono in her closet. She touched her grandfather's medal and looked at the sky through the window. The house was quiet, but not empty. Lorraine was in the kitchen, humming an old tune while making tea. Amara curled up on the couch and closed her eyes. Her body ached everywhere, but it was a good ache, the kind that reminds you you're alive. Outside, videos of her performance were already spreading, but she didn't care. She wasn't looking for likes or applause. She just wanted peace. And in that moment, she knew she was close. **** morning arrived unhurriedly, as if it knew something important was coming. Amara woke before her alarm, body still aching but spirit light. Lorraine was already in the kitchen, stirring coffee with the care of someone. Preparing a blessing. St. Margaret's School felt different that day, as if its halls had been cleansed from within. Students looked at Amara with a new posture, not forced admiration, but genuine respect. No fake smiles, just silence. And sometimes, silence is all you need. In the teacher's lounge, videos of the performance flickered on hidden phones. The principal, previously absent, appeared in the hallway and gave Lorraine a discreet nod. She returned it with a slight tilt of her head, unhurried. Something invisible had been restored. At the afternoon assembly, Coordinator Hargrove took the stage, pale-faced. He cleared his throat, adjusted papers, and announced, "We have a representative for the State Youth Martial Arts Tournament." A murmur ran through the auditorium. Some expected a different name. But when he finished, "Amara Collins will represent our school," silence fell like a veil. Amara neither smiled nor cried. She just lifted her gaze. Lorraine, in the back, pressed her crucifix against her chest and closed her eyes. It wasn't just about a tournament. It was about a story that hadn't started there, but now had. A voice. A black girl, janitor's daughter, now the official image of excellence. And no one could erase that. After the announcement, journalists flocked to the school gates. They sought interviews, wanted the touching story of the fighting girl. Lorraine refused all firmly. She doesn't fight for fame, she fights for herself. Amara walked silently through halls where she'd once been pushed. Now, all stepped aside. Some students offered apologetic looks. Others just lowered their heads. But she sought no justice in strangers' faces. Her justice lived in her own chest. She needed to prove nothing. She just wanted to move forward. And sometimes, moving forward is the greatest victory. In the courtyard, next to the school's honor wall, something new was being installed. A shiny metal panel, usually reserved for major donors and famous alumni. Amara passed by unaware. Lorraine was discreetly summoned by the principal. "We want you to see it before it goes live." Next to the traditional names, in small, serene letters, a new inscription read, "Lorraine Collins, she cleaned our halls," and raised a champion. The woman read silently, touched the metal with her fingertips, took a deep breath, and said nothing. Because some victories can't fit into words. Later that day, Amara walked the halls alone. No one was around. Just light filtering through windows and the echo of her footsteps. She passed every place where she'd been humiliated, every piece of floor where she'd picked up papers, every locker hiding cruel notes. In each corner, she left a gaze, not of pain, but of farewell. She carried no rancor, she carried memory. And memory, once healed, becomes a scar. And scars, once accepted, become honor. At the art room door, she closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, pain, you taught me how to stand." On the sidewalk outside, Lorraine waited. Calm face, hands folded over a clean apron. When she saw her daughter approach, she opened her arms. Amara ran to her, as if returning from a long war. And there, between iron gates and the gray afternoon sky, came the most important reunion of all, the girl with her origins. Mother and daughter walked hand in hand. Said nothing on the way. Didn't need to. Steps spoke. The wind spoke. Even silence said, "Now you are seen." At the end of the street, Amara stopped and looked up. The sky was clear, and a soft light broke through the clouds. Lorraine squeezed her daughter's hand gently. Amara raised her chin, and in a low voice, almost a prayer, whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa." It was as if that light above knew. As if Elijah Collins, somewhere between eternity and breeze, had watched every move she made on that stage. As if the blood silently shed through generations had finally been heard. She smiled, a short, contained smile, but full of peace. And peace is when pain finds rest. The next morning, the panel was complete. Some students stopped to read it. Others passed by. But a young black teacher, newly hired, lingered for minutes, touching Lorraine's name gently. She wept quietly and murmured, "We exist." Life inside the school went on, but something had changed forever. Because a girl, once invisible, had shown there is strength where the world only sees weakness. And a woman, once ignored, had shown that raising is also fighting. The name was engraved, not just on metal, but in every gaze that began to see differently, and that no one could erase. In the end, stories like Amara's don't fit in trophies or gold-plated walls. They keep going when the lights go out, when the hallway empties, when only the echo remains of what was said or what stayed silent. Maybe no one knows the price of each fall, every quiet night, every time hope almost faded away. But it's in the solitude of the struggle that courage learns to walk on its own. The world loves to applaud those who win, but rarely asks about the journey to get there. Amara didn't seek fame. She sought dignity. And deep down, maybe that's what we all need to be seen, even if only for a second, for who we really are. When the system says certain names don't belong in history, someone will always write them in the margins. But life, with its irony, loves to turn footnotes into headlines. Every look that ignored her can become a memory of shame, and every hand extended in secret can change the destiny of a generation. Someone who was once invisible may become the mirror for those still struggling to exist. And the school, that stage of so many masks, learns that authenticity is worth more than any uniform. Amara taught without a single word that no one can silence what was born to resist. Because truth needs no defense, just space. How many times have you stopped believing in yourself because the world didn't give you permission? How many doors closed in your face before you learned to open windows? Maybe the secret isn't to be accepted, but to accept yourself first. Because no one can take away what you build on the inside. Even when they try to erase your name, your mark is already made in the story of those you touched. The world needs less perfection and more humanity, the kind that's born from scars, shy smiles, faith without an audience. And if Amara's journey teaches anything, it's that the impossible bends for those who refuse to disappear. Where do you stand today? Among the crowd, or as someone who dares to walk the other way? What if your greatest weakness could become your greatest strength? Each of us carries invisible battles, sleepless nights, silent screams. And every step toward your own truth is a small victory. Maybe the world won't notice, but you feel it. And that's what matters. Never underestimate the power of someone who carries pain, promise, and faith in their heart, because it's those people who change the course of things without ever asking for permission. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Who knows, maybe in your life, there's an Amara waiting to be recognized too. May invisible names find their place. May the strength of the forgotten finally be seen. And may every time someone tries to dim another's light, you remember, some lights can never be put out. Thank you for making it this far. Never forget, redemption lives in the details. And the next story could be yours.